Week 6 is already here in the NFL, and today on Sports Around the Bar, we're going to be talking about all the action you're going to be watching on Sunday, starting with our first game, the Houston Texans going on the road to face the Tennessee Titans. Throw out the records. First thing I'll say about this game, throw out the records for both of these teams. Even though the Titans are 4-0 and the Texans are 1-4 at this point, this is a grudge match from two teams that, especially at the beginning of the season, were poised to chase after the divisional title. Both of these teams, I still believe, have a lot of talent on them. I know that things haven't started well for the Texans, and the Titans have been flying despite some inadequacies on their defense and in their secondary specifically. But now, a healthy Titans team coming off of a beatdown of the Buffalo Bills on Tuesday night are matching up against a team in Houston that's going to be fighting for their lives. I expect this one's going to be close. I'm still taking the Titans. I think they'll win, and that 3.5-point line is about where I would put it, even at home here. Won't be as big of a deal without a large crowd in Nissan Stadium in Nashville. I still expect the Titans are going to win this game, and I think they're going to win it in typical Titans style, where it comes down to the last minute and the last drive and the last play, whether it's a defensive stop, whether it's a touchdown or a field goal that they score themselves. I think the Titans win a very close battle, somewhere around 31-30, beating the Houston Texans. Our next game is the Cincinnati Bengals going on the road to face the Indianapolis Colts. We're going to be looking to bounce back after a bad loss to the Cleveland Browns last week. And when I say bad, I mean they were run on. That defense was challenged. Look for them to get back to business against a team like the Bengals. Again, massive kind of gap in skill here between these two teams. Indianapolis should win this one, and I can see that 7.5-point line that's been put out there for the Colts as a pretty good marker for them. I think this winds up being an 8 to a 10-point game. I think Indy will get ahead, but the way they run the ball and the way Phillip Rivers has looked this year, I don't really expect a massive blowout. I don't expect a 20-point win here. I think Cincinnati kind of hangs around a little bit, maybe scores a touchdown late to get back close to that 7 or 8 points, but they're just outmatched. The whole takeaway for Cincinnati this week needs to be, what does Burrow look like against one of the best defenses in the NFL? We know his offensive line isn't good. We know some of his weapons are questionable as well. What can this young quarterback do to impress us and to show us that all we need to do is put a couple offensive linemen on the field and Cincinnati might be back as an offense? So I'll take the Colts here really heavily. Again, it's one of my most comfortable picks here of the week. I don't think there's a whole lot of controversy there. Also, again, the Bengals, we're really just watching to see what Joe Burrow does in this sort of situation and how he handles this kind of adversity that he'll probably have to face going up against a defense this good. Our third game, Falcons on the road against the Vikings. Obviously, the season hasn't gone the way these two teams have wanted to, but if you look at it on paper, this is the 30th ranked scoring defense in Atlanta versus the 28th ranked scoring defense in the Vikings. Watch for points to go up on the board. Watch for this to be a high-scoring affair. The Vikings need this one. I think the Falcons are pretty much done. They're dead in the water at 0-5. I don't really see them kind of bouncing back and finding a playoff spot late. I can still see the Vikings doing that. I think the Vikings have the talent that if they can get healthy and they can go on a run, maybe they can squeak their way into the playoffs now that there's an extra team in there this year. It's entirely incumbent on how Kirk Cousins plays, but he should have no problem tearing up this secondary. Also, with Dalvin Cook out, let's watch for Alexander Mattison to make the most of this opportunity. He's a guy I believe in very highly. I think he'll be kind of an X factor in this game because if they can get similar numbers to what they could expect out of Dalvin Cook, out of Madison, they should be able to handle the Falcons relatively easily, no matter who the head coach is. I pick the Vikings in this one, and I think that 4-point line, even though the Vikings are a 4-point favorite, even at home, I think that might be a little conservative. I could see this game getting more than a touchdown out of hand if the Vikings play well. As far as the Falcons go, new head coach coming in to replace Dan Quinn. We'll get to see how the team responds. Obviously, Matt Ryan, I think, will have something to prove after ownership had kind of been a little wishy-washy as to his future with the franchise. So let's watch and see what Matt Ryan does here. I expect he'll come out looking to prove a point. He'll throw 385 yards or something along those lines. Let's watch and see what Matt Ryan looks like, because now apparently the once franchise quarterback is playing for his job in Atlanta. Sticking at 1 o'clock, we have, if it happens, the Broncos and the Patriots, which has been rescheduled to this week. New England is a 9-point favorite now that Cam Newton is expected to return. Drew Lock is also supposed to play in this game. If you would have given me this matchup at the beginning of the year, and we know what the Patriots are, but the Broncos had stayed healthy to this point, I'd say it'd be a close game. I think the Broncos could challenge in this one. But just with these massive slates of injuries that they've had to deal with over these first 5 weeks, I don't see them having the firepower to keep up with a team like New England. They're not going to be able to get through that defense. It'll be interesting to see what Drew Lock comes back. Again, he doesn't have a whole lot of starts under his belt. He's still a guy that is a bit of a question mark, especially when you're talking about the Broncos being 1-3, and if things go off the rails, they could have a high pick and potentially replace him. But the Broncos in this one shouldn't really have much of a chance. I don't think Drew Lock is going to come back off of missing multiple weeks and match up against a defensive guru like Bill Belichick is. I mean, if you look at the stats, Bill Belichick is amazing against young quarterbacks, especially with his defense. I think that trend continues. The Patriots win this one comfortable. I think 9 points is fair. 9 is about where I would set this line because I don't think the Patriots are going to score a ton of points. I don't think their offense is really that good, especially with Julian Edelman on the injury report and likely not to play. I think the Patriots will score points. They'll maybe get into the 20s, but I don't expect a massive blowout here. I think the Broncos hang with it, and this is going to be one of the more conservative games, if not, I don't want to call it ugly, but I'll call it conservative, where there's not quite so many points going on the board, but the Patriots probably have it well in hand from the beginning. Next, we have two teams at the bottom of the NFL standings, but incredibly important still, somehow alive in their divisional race as well. The Washington football team going up against the New York Giants on the road. Now, one collective win, and that win comes in division for these two teams. What do we expect out of this one? The Giants are favored. They're a 3-point favorite at home, which is usually what Vegas gives teams when they have the home field advantage. I know it's a little bit different this year because the crowds aren't there, and your home field advantage probably isn't as steep as it would be in normal years. But this game, I think, is going to be all Washington. I know Kyle Allen's coming back in. He's been cleared to play. He's going to be the starting quarterback for Washington. As long as he stays healthy all the way through this one, I think Washington is going to do just enough to edge out the Giants, maybe by 1 or 2 points at home. This one's going to be sloppy, but I am willing to bet that the Washington football team is still a little bit further along in their rebuild process than the New York Giants are. I expect the Giants to lose this one. The real question is, what does Daniel Jones look like? Because Daniel Jones, even though he's shown some flash and some promise, and we haven't had the same questions that guys like Dwayne Haskins have had asked of them, and now Sam Darnold is starting to have asked of him, even though we haven't had a lot of those questions yet, he's still having to perform for his job. It's second year quarterback. If he doesn't impress for the rest of this year, if he looks sloppy and you're sitting at the top of the draft and you've got the first or the second pick and you can take a Justin Fields or you can take a Trevor Lawrence, the Giants very, very well may replace Daniel Jones and have a new starting quarterback going into next year. So this game is going to be incredibly important, as well as the next time they play the Redskins or the former Redskins, for Daniel Jones in keeping the spot. They need to get to 4 or 5 wins and show a little bit more promise than we've seen, a little bit more of an ability to take care of the ball for him to stay at quarterback for the Giants going into next season. I still think it's too early. I'm a give them 3 years guy when you're talking about young quarterbacks, but when we're talking about this level of talent coming out there in this year's NFL draft, very likely, it's just going to be very difficult for the Giants to not take that guy with that pick unless they just get a sweetheart offer for somebody to trade into that spot. Next, we have the Battle of the Birds as the Ravens go on the road to face the Eagles. This is another good matchup because the Eagles, I know the record isn't there. I know 1-3-1 doesn't impress anybody, and we've talked about how bad the NFC East is. The past couple weeks, this Eagles team has been a lot tougher. They beat the 49ers 2 weeks ago. They almost beat the undefeated Steelers last week as well. This team is starting to turn a corner, and yes, I know they have tons and tons of injuries, which is exactly why we're not picking them to win this game, but they have been a lot more formidable. So when I look at this game, and I see the Baltimore Ravens with that 9.5-point line, I start to question if they're going to cover it. I know the Ravens have been good this year. They've blown everybody out, but their offense has not been as explosive as it was. Maybe, just maybe, we get a good performance out of the Eagles here and keep it under that 9.5-point line. I would take the Eagles and the points here, but I'm picking the Ravens to win this game outright. I think the Ravens are going to be too good for that. The running game is going to be too effective. I think the Eagles' offensive line or defensive line, which has been one of the best in football to this point in the NFL, again, is going to be the X factor here for keeping this one close. At the end of the day, though, they just don't have the firepower at wide receiver to beat a team like the Ravens, and they're not going to run on them consistently with an offensive line this banged up. Look for the Ravens to win this one. I don't think it gets ugly, but I think the Ravens are able to walk away with a comfortable win at the end of the day here. I'm going to say by 6. I'll say the Eagles 28, the Ravens 28 and the Eagles 22 at the end of this one. Next, in one of the best rivalries that has kind of re-blossomed here in the last couple of years, the Browns are going on the road to face the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, last time they played, things got really, really chippy. I'm sure you remember the Mason Rudolph hit, as well as Myles Garrett getting suspended for the year. We'll have to see if any of that chippiness carries over into this game, because now, as opposed to those teams kind of fighting it out for a wild card spot and on the outside looking in, You've got the 4-0 Steelers going up against the 4-1 Cleveland Browns. This is going to be one of the most interesting games of the week, and it happens at 1 o'clock. I can't believe they didn't flex this game. I would have moved it to 3 o'clock if they would have had the option. So let's take a quick look at who we like in this one, because the Pittsburgh Steelers defensively have been amazing. That defense has been just as good as we expected them to be, almost as good as they were last year. They've been killers on that side of the ball, and the offense is much improved for them. Whereas when you go and look at the Browns, offensively they've been great. They've put up a lot of points. Defensively, they've had their questions. So when I look at this one, I know it's a rivalry game. I know it's in division. I know things always get funky with those kind of games. I'm going to go with the heavy favorite. I'm going to go with the favorite here, even if they're not heavy favorites, in the Pittsburgh Steelers, because I believe that the offensive consistency that Ben Roethlisberger is going to bring to the Steelers is going to be enough to edge out a team like the Cleveland Browns. I don't think they're there defensively enough to take Big Ben totally out of this game. I think the Steelers get their 5th win of the year in a close matchup, winning 27-24 against the Cleveland Browns. Not quite covering the 3.5-point line that's set at right now. After that, we have the Bears on the road facing the Carolina Panthers. Carolina somehow favored in this one, 1.5 points against a 4-1 team in Cleveland. I know the Panthers have played well. I know they're 3-2. I know everyone's going to tell me Teddy Bridgewater's been great for them. I just think this Bears defense is going to rip apart the Panthers. I really don't see Teddy Bridgewater coming out and he's going to have to throw for 450 yards, in my opinion, if they're going to keep up. I know their defense has been decent. They've had really good play out of a lot of their corners, and they'll probably frustrate the Chicago offense, but so is everybody else this year, and still they're winning games. I think the Bears, when it comes down to the defensive side of the ball, are going to take Mike Davis out of it. He is the X factor for Carolina. If you can get 90 yards and a touchdown out of Mike Davis, the Panthers stand a chance of winning this one. I just don't think the Bears are going to let that happen. I think the Bears' defense is still what makes this team run, and they're going to have their day against the Carolina Panthers, shutting down this offense and winning another tight matchup, taking this team to 5-1. I think Nick Foles will have a little bit more success than last week, but not a lot. I think it's going to be a little bit of a learning process still in Chicago as he gets used to these receivers and being the full-time starter there. I think Carolina keeps it close, but loses a tight one, losing 23-19 in this one, and dropping to 3-3. As far as Chicago goes, I know there have been people out there saying this team isn't for real and everything else, or this isn't a good 4-1 team. The fact of the matter is they're 4-1. It doesn't matter how they got there, and I think they're going to be 5-1 after this week, after they take care of business against this Carolina team that has been surprisingly good, but not quite good enough to beat a team like Chicago, in my opinion. In our last 1 o'clock game, we have two more teams battling for a high pick as the Lions go on the road to face the Jaguars. Now, Detroit has been disappointing to some. I know I wasn't very high on them going into the season. I didn't say they were going to be a great team. Some people I know were saying maybe 8-8 this year. Maybe the defense turns around. Maybe this is the year they kind of figure it out and start to make a push towards the playoffs. I wasn't so convinced. I think they are the team that they were, but that should still be enough to beat Jacksonville, who, outside of the first week against a division rival in Indianapolis, hasn't really put up a ton of a fight in a lot of these games. I know they've kind of hung around. They battled with the Titans again in division, and they hung around in Miami, but at the end of the day, this just is not a good football team in Jacksonville. They don't have a defense. They don't have a secondary. They're rebuilding at almost every position on their team. They're not going to be able to match up against Detroit, who has still a bit of a running game and has Matt Stafford at quarterback and has some good receivers. I think Detroit's going to win this one, even though these two teams at the bottom, it could go either way. Really, I don't see a huge gap between these teams, but I think Detroit's going to do enough and win in a shootout 32-29. Jacksonville falls in this one. On to 3 o'clock as the Jets go on the road to face the Dolphins. The Dolphins have been good. They've impressed me. Even in the games they're losing, they're hanging with teams. I mean, they hung with Seattle. They beat the 49ers. They beat Jacksonville pretty handily. They have got a couple impressive games under the belt. I expect, with as flat as the Jets have come out here, that this is going to be another impressive week for the Dolphins. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick, for the faith that they've showed him and leaving him in and not going with the young quarterback, has kind of rewarded that and showed him that, hey, maybe if we build up this team, maybe you don't need to rush to the young guy. Maybe you kind of jump the gun in drafting a quarterback. He has been one of the most perplexing quarterbacks in NFL history, in my opinion, because he's not good enough where you don't want to replace him, but once you get your replacement, he plays well and you don't want to get rid of him. So I think that's going to happen again, and that trend's going to continue against the Jets. He's going to have a good day. Maybe he throws a pick or two because he's Ryan Fitzpatrick, but I expect he's going to come out, win this game, especially with no Sam Darnold playing for the Jets, and the Dolphins are going to walk away 3-3 looking around saying, look how different things are this year. I mean, they were very active in free agency. That doesn't always turn out. But it seems like for them, they've done a good job of converting a lot of these free agents into great players in this team. The Dolphins, while I still wouldn't call them a playoff threat, seem like they're on the right track for rebuilding. And who knows, maybe, just maybe, if Tua comes in and it shows some early promise like guys like Herbert and Burrow have, this could be a playoff team if they hit a hot streak. Hard to say. What isn't hard to say is they're going to beat the Jets this week, who now without Le'Veon Bell, no Sam Darnold, pretty much have nothing going for them on the offensive side of the ball. Their defense has been atrocious on top of it. This might well be the worst team in football in New York. So them matching up against a team like the Dolphins, I expect a pretty comfortable loss for the Jets. I think they win this one by 17, 31 to 14. I think the Dolphins are going to blow this one out and are going to win a game that kind of gives the fan base a little bit of a reason to actually start believing in this team for the first time in a long time. After that, we have the Packers on the road to face the Buccaneers in the game of the week at 3:25. Ooh, tough matchup because the Buccaneers defense has been really, really good. And nobody's really talking about them the way that we're talking about Tom Brady in this offense and the receivers, and has Brady lost it. What we haven't been talking about is this defense has been a top 5 unit in the NFL this year, matching up against what is the best offense, dropping 38 points a game in the Green Bay Packers. Devontae Adams is back and healthy in this one. I think the Packers are going to continue their offensive sort of prowess that they've shown. Aaron Rodgers still seems incredibly motivated from all the offseason shenanigans we've seen out of Green Bay. Expect another high-scoring affair, despite how good Tampa's defense is. I think they're still going to put 30-plus points on the board. The question is going to be, can Tampa keep up with that? And to me, the answer is probably not when we're talking about how they've looked to this point, but you never know. Brady might turn it around. I think they can get into a shootout, especially because Green Bay hasn't been quite as good as they were last year defensively. They haven't been as good in the red zone, keeping teams out of the end zone. They haven't been as good rushing the passer with the Smith brothers so far. There'll still be enough to win this game. Green Bay is going to walk away with an easy win here. I know they're only a 1-point favorite on the road here, but Green Bay to me is going to win this one by 6 or 7. I think this one, it's going to be out of hand. I know Brady and Rodgers used to be a pretty big marquee name or matchup where you can say, I don't know who's going to win this one. I think by now the writing is on the wall that Aaron Rodgers is going to win this game. I don't think 1 point's enough. I think Green Bay wins by more than 1 point here. I expect this one to be still high scoring. I'm going to say Green Bay scores 35, Tampa Bay scores 28, and Green Bay moves on to a 5-0 start and is still one of the undefeated teams in the NFL after this game. Next, on Sunday night, the Rams go and face the 49ers on the road. This 49ers team has been rather listless. I don't give them a whole lot of chance in this game. They've just come out flat, and they've had a lot of injuries, losing guys like Nick Bosa. Quan Alexander's probably out in this one, too. They've had some significant injuries to their defense. When I look at this matchup on paper, I'd say the 49ers should still be able to match up. We could see a lot of points go up on the board here because the defenses are beat up, or because the 49ers defense is beat up. But up to this point, I mean, outside of a bad call in Buffalo, this Rams team is undefeated. I think they're going to come out and they're going to handle business again. I'm going to take LA by 3, just like the line says. I think Sean McVay and this offense are sort of back after a down season last year. I expect them to have a lot of success against the 49ers, and to this point, Jimmy G has not impressed this year. I don't think they're going to just change that this Sunday against a good team, even though it's in division and things get a little funky in those games. I think the Rams win this one, and I'm going to say they win by a few more than 3 here. I'm going to say the Rams win by 5, putting up 34 and still allowing 29 points to the 49ers. Good game here. I'm glad it's on Sunday night, so everybody's going to get to watch it. I think it's one of the best games of the week still, even though I think Tampa and Green Bay is a better one. But I expect the Rams to walk out of this one 5-1, and the woes to kind of continue for the former Super Bowl losing team in the 49ers, dropping to 2-4 after this game. On to Monday night, where we're actually going to have 2 games. The early one, which is the Chiefs on the road at the Bills. Another fantastic matchup here. The Chiefs should be able to dismantle the Bills. I think they're going to be a little embarrassed after last week's loss to the Raiders. Even though the Raiders played a hell of a game in that one, I think the Chiefs are going to be looking at it like it was a missed opportunity to walk away at 5-0. I think they're going to come out and they're going to be guns blazing against a team like Buffalo, throwing the ball. The Bills' defense hasn't been as good as it's been in the past couple of years as well. They've had some injuries. They still are not a bad unit, but they're definitely not elite like they have been the past couple of years. I expect Kansas City's going to come out, score a lot of points in this one. I think we're going to see them get away from the run a little bit in efforts to just get back on track and kind of reestablish themselves and just get the momentum flowing again. I think the Chiefs, again, losing to the Raiders, have maybe a little bit to prove here against some of the critics. Maybe they're listening to a little bit of the media attention where everyone's dropping them off their number one spot in the power rankings, everything else, and they're going to be looking to sort of reestablish that this is the best team in football. I think they're going to beat a Bills team that, again, coming off of what's still a short week, having played on Tuesday, and an embarrassing loss, again, on what basically was national television, matching up as the only game on that day. The Bills are going to come out. They're going to play as well as possible, but I just don't see them having the firepower, despite their early successes on offense, to match up with a team like the Chiefs. The Titans pretty much had their way with them. I think the Chiefs are going to do the exact same thing again, and I'm going to see Buffalo drop this one and fall to 4-2, still comfortably in the lead in that division, but sitting at 4-2. I see them losing this one by more than the 5-point line that's set right now for Kansas City. I think this one's going to be, I'm going to say 45 in Kansas City to 33 for Buffalo. I think it's going to be a big sort of margin between these two teams as Kansas City tries to prove the point that they're still the best team in football. And then finally, moving on to our last game, the Arizona Cardinals go on the road to face a pivotal matchup for both of these teams in the Dallas Cowboys, sitting at 2-3. The real question here is, what does Andy Dalton do? Because despite this injury to Dak Prescott, and despite how it might set them back for this year, I actually think this is the best kind of scenario for the Cowboys management. For years, the whole debate with Dak Prescott has been, is he special? Or is it the offense that they've now built that anyone could run if you brought in an average quarterback? Well, let me say this. Nobody's been more average throughout his career than Andy Dalton has been. He seems to be that perfect baseline for too good to replace, not good enough to get you there kind of guy. So if Andy Dalton comes in and he lights up Arizona and the teams coming on the schedule with this offense, the Cowboys ownership knows that they don't need to give Dak Prescott a $40 million contract to be successful. They've already built a great offense. If they could give a guy like Andy Dalton 15 and have him be a starter, or anyone else that comes up in the free agent market after this year, give them $15 million and spend another 25 to fix this defense, that can be a recipe for a Super Bowl. They also will find out that if a guy like Andy Dalton can't run this offense and have success, then they need to pay Dak Prescott. And that $40 million mark, which is now the new benchmark for young quarterbacks, isn't that absurd, and you just have to bite the bullet and give it to Dak Prescott. Even though, again, I don't think Dak Prescott is Patrick Mahomes. I don't even know that I'd say he's Deshaun Watson. He's a very good player in my opinion, but not quite good enough to warrant paying him that $40 million and letting the rest of the team kind of erode around him. So when it comes to this game specifically, this is the beginning of an important experiment for Dallas as to whether they are in the quarterback market when free agency comes, or whether it's just time to pay Dak Prescott and say, we got our guy, let's see what happens. The die is already cast. Switching over to the other side of the ball, in Arizona, I think this game is important for them because, again, you have the Rams that are just running away with it. The Seahawks are absolutely fantastic, still undefeated in that NFC West. If they're going to keep pace, they've got to beat a team like the Cowboys that haven't been able to play defense. This game is important for both of these teams, absolutely. The Cowboys can probably get away with a loss just with as weak as their division has been, whereas the Cardinals, that division, you almost can't afford to lose here. I think while we're talking about this game, I'm going to take the Cowboys to upset the Cardinals here. I think missing Chandler Jones, some of the weaknesses they've shown on defense, the Cowboys should come out. I expect a lot of points to go on the board. I think Andy Dalton, he won't be Dak Prescott right out of the bat. The offense won't be that good, but I think he'll do enough things to put 30 points on the board with the way this Arizona defense is built. As far as the Cardinals go, they're going to score too. This is going to be a shootout, no doubt about it, with the way this Cowboys defense is played. I'm going to take the Cowboys to win this one in a shootout, maybe late, maybe it's a last drive that Andy Dalton kind of punches into the end zone, or a last drive that Kyler Murray just can't quite get them to where they need to be. But I'm going to take the Cowboys by 4 in this one, despite the line being Arizona 1.5. I think the Cowboys are going to win this one 44-40. As both of these teams do whatever they want on offense and struggle on defense to stop the other team. That's going to do it for this week. Which games did I get right? Which games did I get wrong? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you guys after Sunday to talk about all the action going on. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you later next week.